world. Welcome to my world.
So if you've seen my analysis of I-O, you might be thinking I'm about to rip Doomchita a new one. After all, what the hell does Doomchita mean? And I normally use the genius translations of songs when they are available, but this translation has an insane amount of grammatical errors, which I don't genuinely think are intentional, but as you may have guessed based on the tone of this disclaimer, I think they are interesting to analyze regardless of why they are there. I obviously had to look up the word Doomchita, and the only thing that came up was about secret numbers, so it's clearly not a real word, as I had honestly expected. But cheetah means conception, which was interesting. I don't know if Doomchita is meant to mean the doom of conception or the conception of doom, but I don't think it really matters, as both of these options do kind of reflect the implications of the rest of my analysis. I think that this song is about existentialism, and you probably think I'm crazy, but I swear I have reasons for why I think this much. Not necessarily the most convincing reasons, but reasons regardless. I think this song is oftentimes minimalistic. It starts with I'm just the one, kind of referencing the way our existence precedes our essence according to existentialism, but then they add who like you, which is interesting for a multitude of reasons. It's serving as a qualifier, which is important because it is following this individualist statement. Jean-Paul Sartre was heavily criticized for stating, I think, therefore I am, because he was implying essence precedes existence, which was not something he actually believed, but was an implication of those words regardless. The lyricists put existence before essence. They also say who like you, which isn't really grammatically correct, but if you've seen my video where I defended cringy songs, you might remember that I think ways of speaking that we might traditionally view as dumb are not necessarily vapid or invalid. I think there are two ways of looking at this lyric. In some ways, the word like could be viewed as even more powerful than love because it does have a more specific cultural backing than the word love. It could also imply that the speaker and the you are alike in some way, which affects the existential element of the song. I want you guys to know all of that analysis was for one line of the song. We are now on to line 2. I apologize for being insane, but moving on, I feel like a big part of this song is its minimalism. If you've studied writing, you probably know a little bit about the rule of 3. We tend to present things, objects, symbols, people, whatever, in threes just because it has a greater impact. It's interesting to call this line minimalistic based on its content, diamond rings and gold chains, but they take away that third slot to just say things are obvious. There is no third object to round out the line. The essence is obvious, but we also interestingly don't know who the line is about and who is the one making these assumptions. If we choose to believe it's following the first line suit, we do have that established existence, but it could also be describing the you, and either way, someone is making assumptions about the other's essence, which is like one of the main struggles of existentialism. They talk about what people want from them, but it's clear they don't fit the mold. They are just sorry, and just is an important word because it brings in the implications of existence versus essence. Just seems to imply that they are who they are, and you can't change that. In the third line, they bring in the unknown they, who the I and you are in contrast to. They all sound the same, possibly implying they live in bad faith and allow each other's expectations to influence one another. But then they say, I'm ain't funny. And when I first read that, I was so confused. But I think it was probably mistranslated because it would actually make a lot of sense if they were meant to say, I am. That would go back to the I think therefore I am quote that I discussed earlier, and saying ain't funny could reflect how people view them as abnormal and almost disquieting because they do not live in bad faith like everyone else. They describe a chandelier with a bunch of eyes, and they say they're going to put their face on it. I think this is meant to suggest that everyone else's shining qualities and moments are a product of watching others and a, being part of a sort of community, but the speaker doesn't want to just be on the lookout for what is known as good or known as normal. Instead, they are going to put their entire face into this plane of existence. They are going to be themselves through and through, and I kind of really like this symbol of the chandelier. I don't know if you guys watch Mira, but she made a video about the cinematography of Blackpink music videos, and she described how Rosé is so often pictured as floating. This kind of reminds me of that. All of these people are floating in a sort of unclear plane of existence, according to existentialism. Uh, According to existentialism, there is no God, and that causes a sort of anguish among people who realize as such. There is nothing above or below, you're just floating. It's almost violent how they describe more appeal, like societal expectations really are a threat to the speaker. That they say that the you character is stuck, which is obviously an overgeneralization of typical English grammar rules. This could have any number of implications, really. It's entirely possible that it is meant to infantilize them, since little kids are known to make mistakes like these. That's actually where I learned the term overgeneralization, when talking about the psychology of grammar and its development. But yeah, it could also mean it could also be meant to emphasize the harsh sound of the K, with another harsh sound coming from the id suffix, for lack of better words. And they are staring at you, which suggests they are living in bad faith because they are either looking to you to follow you, or because you aren't living in bad faith like everyone else. But the speaker isn't playing. They don't want to be involved in this. You can look at them as something shiny and special, but they won't be held responsible for when things blow up. As far as the pre-chorus goes, I think part of not involving yourself in the essences of others and bad faith is that you're bound to be surprised when you are confronted with it. They may not have wanted this to be their reality, but they have come to believe what they do, which is oftentimes called existential anguish, which is usually rooted in perceived abandonment from a god or gods who might have a greater purpose for people in mind. They don't want to become involved in others' business as a result. They would like to remain as they are, not to perpetuate a lie like they refer to in the chorus. People might be jealous of them since they walk to the beat of their own drum, and living in good faith can be peaceful at times, but it's never easy, which is why we still see the speaker struggling with it. It's unclear who or what the it that they describe is. I think it's meant to represent life in bad faith, which is often easier, but the speaker genuinely wants something more from life. They are like a star in that they are unique in the eyes of others, which sounds like they are putting them on a pedestal, but in reality, there are so many stars in the sky. One person's influence could influence a constellation, maybe, but they will likely never alter anything about this night sky as a whole. That's kind of how philosophers really are. They are laying the foundations for people to rebel from normal life, but alarms will ring when people go places that other people might think they shouldn't. People will never be able to exist in a vacuum. People will know when individuals are trying to be different, and there is inherent conflict in those kinds of interactions. But there's also the possible implication of, if you're above things, like a star is above the rest of the world, you can't be defined by that world. However, stars will inevitably die, and it's not a peaceful thing. Existence will swallow you, and your only option is to try and veer off from the expectations of others when it might already be too late.